Hey everybody, I'm just here to give you a kind of a quick rundown of stain and exterior paints. So hopefully you can hear me well enough, and I'll kind of go through things slowly to try to make sure you can understand. I'll start with chemicals. So we've got all the different chemicals on the shelf here. First is Remove. This is going to be, as it says, removes oil and latex stains. It does not work fantastic on solids. It does not work on anything sickens except for SRD. And by the dilution rates, you always want to go less than it shows for dilution. If you dilute all the way, it really doesn't tend to do a very good job. It works, but it's not amazing, depending on the type of stain. Restore is takes grade wood, turns it into white stainable wood. Basically, you just follow the instructions on the can. Again, generally not diluting it to the maximum dilution. Once that's done, it does need to be followed up with Brighten. Actually, so does Remove. Both these products leave the wood acidic. You have to use Brighten after. The other option, or the other thing that Brighten does, Brighten will also chemically remove mill glaze from new wood. So that's the product that if people do not want to sand on new pressure treated wood or cedar or anything like that, that's what they can use. But then the wood needs to thoroughly dry before they're going to introduce stain. Generally 2 to 3 days depending on humidity. Clean works great for vinyl siding, old decks, or old stains. It will remove mold and mildew, and it will clean products. It'll get the dirt and grime out of stains, but that's only if it's a sound coating, doesn't require sanding. If you're gonna sand, it's a bit redundant. Waterproofer, this is like Thompson's Water Seal. It's siliconized and wax in water. We don't generally suggest it because it's a hard product to recoat, and it's a hard product to recoat with itself. It generally will leave boards that have been coated many times with a silicone. They'll rot from the inside because moisture finds its way through screw holes and underneath, but it will not let it evaporate and come up the top, so the wood retains moisture inside. Out of that, we'll go to the Arbor Coat board here. In all of our stains, we have, in a product color like white, we've got solid, semi-solid, semi-transparent, and then we also have translucents, which are the pre-tinted ones. In translucents, as shown here, we've got translucent water base, which is the 623 line. We have translucent oil base, which is the 326 line. Those products look extremely similar, do similar things. Then it's semi-transparent. You have a waterborne and an oil base. And then it's semi-solid. You have a waterborne and an oil base. And then in solid, we only have a emulsified oil, which is really just a pure latex as far as people are gonna deal with it. In the latexes, if somebody uses semi-transparent or semi-solid, it needs to have the clear put on a deck, but not on a fence. If they're using a translucent waterborne, this does not get top coated and is just two coated with the same product. We don't like using these on decks. This whole system of the two coats with the clear over top tends to be a problem in our climate. So that's where for decks, we really like out of these lines to be suggesting oils. And if somebody really wants to only use a latex, either using the translucent latex, two coating, or going to a solid in the waterborne. That's kind of a quick rundown. I'll show you the cans over here. So for decks, this line, which is the 326 line, these are the oils. Those are generally what we suggest for decks. If somebody wants something quite natural and clear, the natural is a good one to go to. We do have a special formula in the oil, the 32806, which we have on the stir stick somewhere here, which is 30Y 3WH. That still gives a pretty good UV barrier to new wood that somebody wants to look really natural, but it is not a full UV barrier, versus if you go with a factory made, these have a full UV barrier, or if you're into a semi-transparent or a semi-solid, they're giving full UV protection, and of course solid always is because you're putting an opaque coating over top. With the semi-transparent and semi-solids, again, the oil base we're happy to use on verticals or decks. When you go to the water bases, verticals are great, but decks just, they seem to need to be coated every year. So we try to stay away from those. Solids work on everything. So Arbor Coat Solid can go over any existing coating unless it's fresh. Something like fresh Thompson's Water Seal or fresh SRD that have silicone in them. Those coatings need to be a season old before something this will go over top, but this will go over top of paint, stain, semi-transparent, semi-solid, as long as it's weathered, and of course goes over new wood as well. That kind of gives you an idea of everything there. At the end of this, if you guys want to send me emails or questions, I'll answer them kind of in a second video. From this, move on to exterior paints. For exterior paints, we have 3 different grades. Ben, which come carrying the flat and the low or soft gloss. This is a traditional paint by what people are going to understand of a traditional paint. When you go to Home Depot and anywhere else, you're going to get a traditional paint, which is going to be a reasonably thin coating, and the reason is because of its breathing rate. If you build this really, really thick, it's just going to peel because it will not hold up to allowing moisture to transmit through it. That's where we change when we go into Regal is badged as a high build, but obviously so is Aura. Aura started as a high build and then they've modified this to be a high build. The benefit to high builds is they will go over pretty much anything. You can go over latex or oil coatings. The only time I'd be hesitant to put Regal or Aura over oil is if it was extra, basically high gloss. Then it would need a sand or primer like Sticks or Fresh Start before you put it on. These products prime to raw wood, to pressure treat, to cedar, spruce, any raw wood outside extremely well. The best thing for any of the woods before we're painting or staining is always to sand, really low grit, nothing higher than 80, preferably 50 or 60 grit, and then putting this on. All the exterior paints and stains in latex are good to 4 degrees Celsius as a coating, but then they need to remain above that 4 degree mark for at least 4 hours from when they're finished their paint or stain. The best paint we've got for color retention is Aura because of the color lock in it. That's going to be different than Regal or Ben. Ben is not a bad paint. It's competitive with what's out there from other companies. Regal and Aura are really different than anything anybody else sells. Nobody else sells a proper high build product. And when they do, like Behr's Decover and all those really thick coatings, they will peel versus these will not tend to peel. We've had extremely good luck with Aura. We are starting to sell Aura Flat for decks. We're getting, from everybody that's used it so far, I've had nobody coming back with premature failure. We're getting 5 years pretty easy at these, and then they just start to get a few spots where they're high traffic, they start to wear. All that needs to be done then is they need to be cleaned with something like Clean, lightly sanded in the spots that are peeling, and put that back on. These products, also Regal and Aura, can go over products like Behr Decover. We see a lot of failures with that, and that's because they're trying to put on an extremely thick coating onto the wood. It only works when moisture doesn't get in, but moisture always finds a way in, builds up under the coating, and that's when you get that peeling, and people will come in and they'll describe peeling sheets of paint off. That's what that is. This will stick to that and then can fill in because it's a thicker paint in some of the areas that are peeled, but they will need to be feather sanded or you'll have ridges that will show up. The best thing is to never use something like Behr Decover or the Rust-Oleum 10 coat product or whatever. They're just really bad products for decks. They're doing what this does to a degree, is putting on a very heavy coating that will be very resilient to traffic and very impervious to moisture passing through it. The problem is they do not have what's permeability rating, where moisture can pass through as a vapor when the sun hits all that moisture that's in the wood and turns it into a vapor and it wants to come through the coating. Outside of that, then we've got Sikkens products. Sikkens has basically three main products. We've got SRD, which is actually very akin to our translucent oils in Benjamin Moore, except it has quite a bit of silicone, and people will notice that. It will really dance on the surface. This is SRD. SRD is a 1 coat. We have customers that 2 coat it and get away with it, but it is not something we suggest. If somebody wanted to put on a heavier coat, this would be where we'd look at wet on wet coating. And same thing with the Benjamin Moore oils, the 326, the 328, and the 329. Those products, they don't work well to be 2 coated. They get extremely shiny on the second coat. But if you do 1 coat, which we usually suggest doing about 4 boards, then coming back to those same 4 boards and coating them again. You'll get one bonded coat that half of it's soaked in, and now you have a finish on top, but it remains quite flat. We're getting 2 to 3 years before that needs to be recoated. Anything translucent will always require more maintenance than something solid. Sikkens has Rubal Solid, very, very similar to Arbor Coat. In color retention is not bad, but not as good as Arbor Coat. Sticking to certain surfaces, Rubal will go to synthetic decking or Duradeck. We do not suggest doing that with Arbor Coat. If we're wanting to use a Benjamin product for painting synthetic or Duradeck, we would want to see something like the Fresh Start 4600 and then putting the Aura over top, or possibly testing just putting Aura straight onto it. SRD really can only go onto itself or something similar to it, or to raw wood. And then generally we suggest coating this year and then coating next year, and then every 2 years after that. They should have a nice finish built up on it after a couple years that is easy to maintain. The other option for decks is Cetal Deck Finish. Deck Finish is a 2-coat. It's a little more finicky on prep. It has to be sanded. If somebody comes in and says they don't want to do any prep, SRD will go on. It won't peel, it'll just kind of disappear, but it will fail much sooner than if it's sanded, because the coating will go on a lot thinner. They'll get a lot less product into the wood. Deck Finish, when maintained properly, we tell people to two coats the first year, and then every 3rd summer. If they let it go years 4 and 5, it's going to peel because it's going to get too thin. Moisture is going to get underneath and push it off. Some people still like using Cetal 1 for decks. It's a 3-coat product then. For decks, it's not really officially recommended, but we have lots of people that have used it for a long time and they like doing that, and it does work because it is a very thin coating with a good breathability. Cetal 2-3 is part of the Cetal 1, Cetal 2-3 system. That means 1 coat of Cetal 1, 2 coats of 2-3, but that is only for non-walking surface applications. That really is meant to be replaced by log and siding. Log and siding is a 2-coat system that, when it is done, will build thicker than Cetal 1 and 2-3, but will remain more breathable and tends to last longer to the weather. So in the end, it's less expensive to use log and siding on something vertical than it is to use 1 and 2-3. It's less coats, which means less labor, and it should last longer from everything we've seen. So Cetal 1 and 2-3, I don't tend to sell a lot because I believe so much in log and siding. I've used lots of it and really happy with it. Outside of that, you have Cetal Maintenance. That is basically colorless log and siding with a little bit more shine to it, but it is clear, totally clear, basically just totally clear log and siding. It cannot be used on its own because it does not have a full UV barrier. That's why it needs to be used over top of another coating like log and siding or Cetal 1, but not to go over top of SRD. If people are thinking they want to use SRD as a first coat because it's inexpensive, and then use something like Maintenance or log and siding over top, you can get adhesion problems because SRD is the only one of this group that has silicone in it. Outside of that, I think that's kind of got everything wrapped up. So we'll leave it at this for video 1, and once you got some questions, we'll do another one.